I've been here for 28 years, and it has probably quadrupled in size, which, is okay in a sense. Unfortunately, a lot of these people that are coming here to change it. And that's not why I came here. I came here to enjoy the beauty of this wonderful place we live in, and now it's overrun by a bunch of Californians and Texans.
You mean these people, Mary? Look at this crowd. I bet Mary remembers what it used to be like when you'd come downtown. You could actually get a table. Didn't have to wait an hour to get a drink. Not anymore. This might be some posturing, though. After all, it is a holiday weekend in Durango. It's not always this jam-packed. But it shows you how things have changed here. This is a small, peaceful mountain town no longer. It wasn't until the 5th day of the Mountain West trip that I made it to Colorado. So far, the journey was all next door in Utah, where I saw the housing crisis and the other problems that come with being the flavor of the year. Sucks over there. But this is why I do this. Is there anything more American than a 4th of July parade in a small mountain town? You couldn't have picked a more glorious day. Now, I could have chosen any number of small Colorado towns to stop for a couple days. Many are out on the prairie where ranches and agriculture rule the day. Many others are ski towns filled with resort snobs. But I chose Durango. Now, I'm not showing you this because I think you should move here. It's not for everyone. I'm showing it to you because it's a wonderful place to be. But it's changed a lot. Durango has a long history of rough and tumble and boots and spurs. It was a very lawless place in its infancy, full of cattlemen and cattle rustlers and gangs and thieves, marshals and vigilantes and shootouts and saloons. Now those cowboy days are long, long gone, mister. Now Durango's turning into every other bougie fantasy land for the rich. And that's just sad. That there is the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad. Today it's a tourist attraction. Folks can head out into the canyons and see some of the prettiest mountain gorges in the USA. Back in the day, that railroad was used to transport all the gold and silver found in these hillsides. Transport by rail is something we just don't do enough anymore. And that's a shame. I think everybody should ride the rails every now and then. Very impressive how they built things back then, isn't it? Now, where are we anyways? Well, Durango's a small mountain city at the bottom of Colorado's western slope. It's an area on the edge of the Rocky Mountains. We're close to the New Mexico border and just about as far south in Colorado as you can get. Over here in between mountain ranges, it's still a lot of cattle ranches and farmland. But a lot of that's slowly going away, making room for more developments and more wealth. There's still some old Durango hanging on, though. Walking around town, you can tell you're still in kinda barely cowboy country. There's a bar called El Rancho that seems to be sort of original. They even have a macho mural as a sign of the olden days. The History Museum here has some cowboy wardrobe on hand. But are they trying to say this is all history? Maybe. This place looks like it's still trying to hold on. Old Colorado vintage. Now that's how things used to be, mister. Look at all that denim. I saw a lot of throwback cowboy gear. I really like that jacket. But for the most part, a lot of this is just for show. None of this really means much anymore, except as a reminder of this region's past. Durango was founded in 1880 by the railroad companies who needed a place to stay while they got things going in all the local mines. Back in the late 1800s, Durango had saloons, blacksmith shops, hotels, all the stuff you'd think of when you pictured the Wild West. There were a lot of gunfights in the streets, and lots of people were hung from trees in town. It was completely out of control and very lawless. Back then, people'd get shot for knocking over somebody's drink. Kind of puts things into perspective. We think our country's more dangerous now than ever. Today's a lot more orderly than it was back then. Well, eventually the railroad part was outdated and Durango got kind of stagnant. But then the city took a new direction when they decided to focus on making this a tourist magnet. And, well, here you go. But it's not just become a tourist trap. It's become a Coloradan's worst nightmare, a playground for the rich and entitled, and one where the new folks coming in have no care about the history and ways of this land. Now, we're going to talk about this a lot more when we get closer to Denver in a few days. But in case you didn't know, Colorado's been overwhelmed with outsiders. It's mostly wealthier families who fled expensive states with rising crime and homelessness. California. Most of the new people moved to Colorado's big cities, but now it's starting to creep into the mountain towns. The population here in Durango's grown by 1/3 in just the last 20 years alone. And that's changing things here. For one, it is way more expensive to live here than it's ever been. And there's no sign it's going to let up either. Right now, we're in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Durango, where just about everything is $1 million these days. Nice area, but wow, right? The average cost of a home in Durango has skyrocketed from under $500,000 to almost $700,000 in just 3 years. And they can't create enough housing for all the demand. I mean, we're in the middle of the mountains. This ain't Phoenix, but folks don't care. The average family of 4 can scrape by if mom and dad both earn about $25 an hour. That's not a huge bar, but keep in mind, there aren't a lot of good jobs out here. 17% of the population in Durango lives in poverty now. That's far higher than the national average. And to make it worse, all the rich people are buying up homes and turning them into rentals. Teachers can't afford to move here anymore. The hourly workers who work in retail and tourism can't either. A lot of the rich people move here for the amenities, but they're forcing out the workers who can't afford to live here and wait on them. A lot of longtime Durango folks are having to move to a little town called Bayfield, 30 minutes down the mountain, and then commute in. And a lot of the locals aren't happy about that. As the locals are pushed out, they're being replaced by older, much wealthier people from out of state. 1/3 of the people moving into Durango these days have incomes over $100K a year. And sadly, all this has changed Durango's culture. I mean, it's still a charming little mountain town. It's just not the same small mountain town anymore. Durango's vibe was funky blue collar mixed with ski bum. It hasn't historically been a very welcoming place for outside views or progressive. But it's starting to look like other Colorado ski towns that have seen themselves turned into a business operation. places like Aspen and Telluride. So what will Durango be one day but an old, rich haven? Something to think about.
And I came here to keep it the way it was. Unfortunately, most of the people who come here want to change it and make it like where they're from, where they escaped from. But we'll make it just the same. No, we don't want that here. We want you all to go away and let us be back to our nice, happy little goldfish bowl here in the mountains and enjoy ourselves. Instead of worrying about what all y'all want to do with charging for bags and charging for drone displays that go over not very well. So yes, I love living here. It is my home, but unfortunately, there are too many people coming in trying to change this into something different instead of leaving it the way it is.
Now, yes, rich people have changed Durango for good. But you can see why they want to be here. It really is a wonderful place to be. It's clean and safe. There aren't any murders here. And there's all sorts of outdoorsy stuff to do. Great skiing and boating and hiking. And it's all very pretty. Hey, you guys. What are you doing? It's not very diverse here, in case you're wondering. It's about 90% white and 10% Hispanic. Their little downtown has lots of nice little shopping boutiques and places to eat and artsy stuff. This is a big tourist draw year-round. And besides the ski town part, it's also a college town, kinda. Fort Lewis College is a nice little place to get your learn on in town. There aren't a lot of jobs here, so it's not a good place to raise your family if you want them to remain close by. But most of the people moving here these days aren't moving for work. They're here to relax and take all this in. Now, I already showed you some of the neighborhoods earlier. There really isn't a bad side of town at all. This is Durango, people. This is what an average neighborhood in Durango looks like. Everything around here is about 800,000 or more. It's super pretty up here, but these houses aren't massive or anything. You don't get a big lot. And these prices are just going to go up over time. And if you're curious, this is the cheapest side of town. In here are the old holdouts who haven't been forced out of town yet. You'd be lucky to find anything on this street under $500,000. And if you did find it, so did everyone else. There'd be a huge bidding war, and then you'd realize that you can't afford to live in Durango.
If I lived in Colorado, it would be in a place like this. And I would wear all my fancy clothes when I went downtown to shop every day.
Karen, you would be hated by the locals if you moved here. You're the exact type of person that's coming in and ruining places like this.
Well, that's too bad. They made this place nice, and people like me want to move in. Shit changes. Get used to it. We're coming.
When I was out and about in Durango, I did a lot. I was here for 2 days on the best holiday of the year. I already showed you the parade. That was really neat. I saw a lot of patriotic people downtown Durango, which was nice. I'm sure these people love their country, but I think most of them were geared up because of the holiday. Especially this dude. So the next day, I decided to tour downtown Durango. To see just how the place has really changed and what the vibe was. First off, the internet was right. There is bougie all over town. I saw an expensive real estate office right next to a fancy place that sells rugs. That doesn't feel very small mountain town to me. Where's the bearskin rugs and the antlers on the wall? Boy, have things changed. Here's an idea on how expensive property is here now. In downtown, they have all these boutique real estate storefronts. $1 million for that. Even a mobile home is pushing it. They dropped the price from outrageous to still outrageous. Good Lord, Colorado. You sure have forgotten your roots. But walking around Durango, even though it seems pretty uppity, it's all still very nice. There's very few bums anywhere. Yet. I did see some at the nearby park, but it was minimal. I think maybe they shooed them away because of the holiday crowd in town. But some people had their lawn chairs locked to a sign, so maybe it isn't as safe as I thought it was. Who does that? Never seen that before. It's very dog friendly here. I can say that. Everybody has a dog here. And I only saw one dog fight that day. That was refreshing. Durango does have some connection to its past. There's a whole history museum down at the old railroad station that shows you how trains used to be made. Back when men were men and so were the women. Nobody can deny this part of Colorado is still very outdoorsy. There's a lot of places to stock up on stuff to get your fish on or to get stuff to shoot something with. There's plenty of places to shop. I saw a lot of expensive places to get jewelry. I think they put that bear in there to remind us we're in the mountains. This must be what rich Durango women think are hip clothes. Seems pretty thirsty if you ask me. All the thrift stores here are filled with old cowboy shit. If that isn't a sign that Durango has changed forever, like this is old Durango now. I was looking at some vintage flannels at the thrift store, thinking maybe I could use something for that cold mountain air. $125? What the? Do they think I'm loaded? I think they do. But so much of this stuff was overpriced. Cool digs, though. Of course, you see a lot of today's modern cowboy look all over town. For the locals who want to pretend to be rough and rugged, but never step foot on a horse. With Yellowstone cologne, if that isn't pretend mountain man, I don't know what is. Oh, and remember that super macho cowboy coat I showed you in the storefront window? Well, guess what? It's mine now. How do I look, YouTube? I can now begin my transformation for the real cowboy part of the trip coming up. The Strater Hotel is where I stayed for 2 nights. Neat place. I can tell they haven't changed it very much. But that's what people want when they come to Durango. At least people that want to know all about the past. Connected to the hotel is the Diamond Bell Restaurant. Now this place eeks old Durango. This is how things used to be here, mister. This place was built in 1887, and it looks like they left a lot of it the same. I hear there's still bullet holes in the walls. Some of the world's best ragtime pianists have played here. And legend says that a lot of cowboys and cowgirls have ridden right up to the bar and ordered a beer. Horse and all. I wish that happened when I was here. That'd make for some good video, huh? I also ate dinner here one night, and it was perhaps the worst meal I had on the entire trip. Very disappointed in that.
Funny out there, man. Howdy! How's everybody doing this evening?
On my second night, I went to a real chuck wagon on the outskirts of town, to a place called Bar D Ranch. Oh yeah, this place is legit. They give you your food on plates in a line and everything. The food was really good. And then they had some old-timey band come up and play some tunes that only people over 70 really seem to enjoy.
Rollin', 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 rollin'.
And at the end of the weekend, Durango celebrated the holiday in style. JK, they didn't. The whole area here is in fire danger zone. So instead of fireworks, they tried a drone show for the first time ever. Wah, wah, wah. Now, I know it was their first time, but I can say, based on the feedback I got from the locals, if they don't improve this dramatically, I don't think many people are even going to bother to come down and see it again. The show was 15 minutes long, and it was kind of like if you let some third graders perform at Red Rocks. Sucks.
And he said, if I come out of this, if I make it through this, I will be transformed. I'm going to change my life.
It's good to see so many people having fun at the park, listening to music, catching up, gossiping, not having to keep their kids on a leash or worry about bums walking through. Durango, Colorado is a real gem. They don't make them like this anymore. But ironically, the charm of the place is making it less charming. It's starting to look like a regular place now. And we know what regular looks like in America. Do we have any small places left that aren't ruined by economic decline or by economic success? The ranching and farming and cowboy influence is just about gone now. The ski bum vibe has just about run its course. It's certainly not a sleepy little town anymore. All these new people with their deep pockets and their different views have added an interesting twist to the place. There's no doubt about that. And times change. Nothing stays the same. Durango's just growing up. But it's just another Western casualty. Guess it's nobody's fault. It's just part of life. But we'll never get it back again.
God bless the U.S.
God bless our church.
I like Durango a lot, Jasper. I think it's a wonderful place, and that's why I actually went there to show everybody. Here's a wonderful small town in Colorado. But, you know, I could drive around and be a tourist and say, here's places that you can shop and here's what you can do and ride the train. Or I could say, you know, it's a wonderful place, but it's changing fast and here's what you need to know. And I was doing
that's better. That's better. I mean, we had, right now things are overpriced, and it actually matters that, I've watched some of your stuff. It actually matters that some of these places that can't run themselves. I've been a mayor of a small town here in Durango 2 terms, and there's 3 things you have to do. One is the citizens that live in your town need to be safe in their persons and property. They're not getting mugged or getting their tires slashed or having home invasions like in Oakland Hills of California, where they have home invasions against the Asians and stuff. Then the second thing is people have to be able to make a living, and they can't make a living in San Francisco when they're closing half the retail stores. And then the third thing is you have to be proud of your town. And I don't know how some of these people in some of these towns can be proud of their town. That's why they're leaving. You can't live in a place that you don't like, right? And if you can't do those three things, you're going to leave. And the problem is we've seen like our house, which is a 2,600 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3-bath house built in the late 50s, early 60s, but we've remodeled it 8 times, but more Durango style, where it's like one room at a time, what we can afford, not California style, where they just rake the house out and put a second story on and spend $500,000. So suddenly our little neighborhood that, we got a $650,000 house. It appraised on the drive-by 2 years ago at $700,000. Right now it's $925,000. And that's ridiculous. And so, working people, they can't afford houses like that. And we don't want to sell our house because we actually like it. We're not living there to make money on it. We're living there because we like our house, So anyway, that is changing the dynamics, And I've been through 5 downturns. So Colorado historically has always had a roller coaster ups and downs. And so one of our Durango jokes is how to tell the difference between a new resident and old resident in Durango. New resident never lost money in real estate.
Well, the reason I found you is because I was digging up some research on Durango, and I came across some articles where some people in Durango are happy about the way things are going. Some people are not happy. There was an article that I read where you said that you were kind of on the fence. You got to have the growth, but you want to be able to retain your culture. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that you said was, the big debate is how do you continue to make Durango interesting and bring in the tourism and bring in new people, but not lose your cultural identity.
Correct.
And so I wanted to ask you about that. How do you feel about the way Durango's headed in the last few years?
Yeah, no, I think that's an issue, and that is where there is tension, and it comes down to 3 or 4 factors. One is in Durango generally, we don't really necessarily care who you are or care how fancy you are. We really want to know, are you willing to contribute to the community? When you come here, are you going to add to the community as opposed to subtract from it? Or particularly what we don't like is if you're going to come to the community and tell us how we should live. We're just not into that. The second thing is on that dynamic, and that's why I was involved in the tourism tax increase that we passed barely, like 50.3 to 49.7, is that we added sustainable tourism to a criteria for our lodgers tax. So we did destination marketing, but more importantly, management, can we sustain our culture, our small businesses, and our environment and our economics as we market tourism. We also restricted tourism to 55% of what we raise, and we brought in money for the arts, 14%, money for transit. So we had a specific transit fund. It's about $1 million a year. And then the third thing is, so I was involved in that, and we had a lot of pushback because we have new people in town that hate tourists. Well, it turns out that we've had tourists in Durango since we were founded.
New people, were they new from, like, they moved to Durango as somebody that, like, from California or something that decided to show up and they're like, we don't want any more tourists here? Is that how?
Yeah, or they could have, it's what I call the wax museum syndrome. So I moved to your town. I want to freeze it in a point in time. None of my family's here. None of my kids are here. I just want this perfect place, and I don't want you to change it at all. And so we were at a meeting with one of the old ranching families, and it's a public meeting, and everyone was bitching about Durango. This is maybe 19 years ago, 20 years ago. And he was 75. His name was Art Isgar, and everyone's bitching about Durango. He goes, well, what I want to know is if Durango's so screwed up, how come everyone wants to move here? Okay, and took all the air out of the room. So the point being is there's a lot of things that we've done right, and there's some things that we need to do better. But it's really critical that if we're going to continue to market our community, that we do it in a environmentally sound way. We want to avoid what's happening right now in Lake Tahoe, where they're just overrun and they're having a hard time maintaining their cultural and environmental identity because they haven't really managed their tourism. It's becoming an issue, and so we're trying to get ahead of it, out front of it, because tourism is part of our economy. And so I think that tension, and it's not just people from California. It's always easy to blame the Californians or the Texans, but we're getting a lot of people from other parts of Colorado, and we're also getting people from parts of Colorado that are even more expensive than we are, like a Telluride or a Vail. I mean, right now there's places that in some counties in the state, there's nothing under $1 million. And so that's going to create, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, do you think, is Durango, some people feel, especially the people that grew up there, the longtime Durango folks, and then you've got the people that work in the retail and the tourism side that don't make a lot of money, that have to commute in from nearby places.
Right.
Are people like that worried that Durango is on a pathway to become another Aspen or Telluride or resort town?
Well, that's a good question. So right now, I think that that's always been, I would consider it a haunting possibility, but it hasn't been a reality because we are not a company town. So a company town is a Telluride, a Vail. Any of the ski towns are company towns because they have one economic engine, the ski area, that dictates what happens. It's one reason in Colorado we have the Colorado Association of Ski Towns. So the ski towns got together to try to be big enough to fight their local ski area. Our ski area is just part of the community, but it doesn't drive the train. They have a hard time just running themselves. And so Durango still has competing interests, which means that nothing happens without a pretty good fight about it, but that's good. And I've always liked Durango because we're a little bit screwed up. No one can run town. So train can't run town, skier can't run town, college can't run town, city or the county can't run town. Everyone's tried, but no one can run town. So you have competing interests and competing values, which sometimes can actually create a better outcome. Probably the bigger difference, Nick, might be that we do have, we've had wealthy people in Durango, but we've never had some of the very wealthy. We don't have the ultra wealthy like a Aspen or a Telluride, but there's definitely more people with more money, and that does change the dynamic. Like we never had gated communities. Now we have gated communities. We never had people that received zero of their income from Durango. Now we have a significant number that receive their income from somewhere else. And so fortunately, we've been a little bit ahead of it where we have limits on vacation rentals, which is good. We have permitting on vacation rentals. And so our biggest challenge right now is the workforce housing, because we have to get that addressed or the cops, the firefighters, and the teachers can't live here. Does that solve the problem? Not necessarily, but I think we're trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah. Are you guys doing all this because you see how other places in Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Utah? I mean, it's like this. You were the flavor of the month for the last 10 to 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
That part of the country, and a lot of places have been ruined by development and new people coming in, and then crime and traffic and all the stuff. Is that why you guys are kind of being proactive to try to maybe let that happen?
No, I think it's correct. And I don't think we're in a position to not let it happen. I think we're in the position to mitigate what could happen. That makes sense, because there's no guarantee that we can pull it off. And, the last 2 years, when your house that's worth $650 to $700 suddenly is worth $925, that's an artificial place to be. So we have had, in my opinion, community members that have been contributors that they got to retirement age and said, geez, I could cash out and move someplace else. And, you can't fault them for that. particularly if their kids moved out of town and suddenly they're someplace else. So, and that means you're losing a good community member and you're replacing them. And if the person you're replacing that house with is just a 2 weeks a year, we'll put the rest of our house on vacation rentals, you just lost a community citizen and got basically not a tourist, but just a second home. We're going to take advantage of your community, but we're not going to contribute.
Where do you see Colorado going in the next 20 years? It's completely changed. Out of all the states out west, I think it's probably changed the most. Where's it going?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So there is a big dynamic difference. So the Front Range, that's kind of gone, in my opinion. But it was always a big place. But I don't even go to Denver anymore. I don't go there. I got business and family down in Santa Fe. I have good friends in Grand Junction and Steamboat. So I just don't go to Denver. Or if I go past Denver. So there is always been, we have an organization called Club 20, which is the 20 Western Colorado counties on the west side of the Continental Divide, plus the two Indian tribes, plus a couple other counties that feel disenfranchised from the Front Range. So it really is 2 states. And our neck of the woods is kind of how Colorado used to be, but we're struggling to keep it that way. And that is challenging. The joke in Western Colorado is the higher the altitude, the more liberal the politics, until you get to Leadville, which is total libertarian. But Grand Junction is more conservative than Montrose, and Montrose is more conservative than Crested Butte. And you get to Aspen or Telluride, and it's pretty liberal. So there's a little bit of a joke on that. And so that dynamic is changing. And there's some issues there. And you also have what I call micro-urban areas. So the politics of Durango in the city are much different than the politics out in the country. And so, we have some challenges on that. But some of those dynamics have always existed. But the Western Slope, we're struggling right now because we're trying to keep there's nothing wrong with tradition and traditional values and farmers and ranchers and rednecks. Nothing wrong with that. But some people, maybe we need to adopt the Australian philosophy, which is fit in or blank off. In other words, you need to fit into our culture. And we're struggling with that, of keeping our culture the way it is and promulgating or communicating with new members that, you need to fit in. And so I spend a lot of my time when I'm meeting with people new to town and helping them on cultural identity and telling them that, I know you were a CEO and I know you're a fancy person and I know you have lots of fancy friends, but we really don't care. What we really care about is, will you contribute to our community? And so, I just tell it straight up. And, do they listen? Some of them do, some of them don't. And so going back to your thing, where we're going to be in 20 or 30 years, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. And I hope that we'll be in a better place. When we moved to Colorado, there's 4 million people. That's when we came to college here 50 years ago. And right now there's 7 million. And it's not that necessarily we have more people, but the 3 million people that came to the state, I can't really tell you if it made it a better place or not.
There's a lot of people in Colorado that say it did not. I noticed it's very clean. It feels very safe. I didn't see any homeless folks. Now, I was there on the 4th of July weekend. So it's typically when there's a lot of folks in town, some of the riffraff gets pushed out of the way. How have you guys managed? It seems like the homeless and the drug problem is creeping into every small town out that way. I didn't see it in Durango. How do you guys manage that?
Good question. We have had a pretty active community and trying to work with the homeless. There's mixed feelings about it. Just last night we had We had a crazy guy that has a criminal record, broke into a house of a sex offender and tried to kill him because he thought that maybe his kid was being compromised. We would never have stuff like that. So we are getting some people that are not community contributors. And I'm not saying the homeless people aren't. This was a different situation. We have a pretty active United Way, pretty active nonprofit community. We probably have 200 nonprofits. We have a police department that is pretty well balanced and have done a good job, but it's still an issue. And we also do have one of the things you're going to have in any. We're not really a border town like a Farmington or a Flagstaff or any of the larger communities that are right on the edge of whether it's the Navajo Reservation or other Indian reservations. But we do have a number of Native people, along with Anglos, Hispanics, all different kinds of people that are homeless. But it's a fairly small number, but it's been an issue.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because, up in Bozeman, there's homeless people all over the place, and a big part of what they say the problem is the cost of living. There's working poor that are literally living in RV villages on the outskirts of town, and you walk through there, and I knocked on doors, and there's nobody there. They're all at work. These are people that are working. Right. They're not bums. Now, Durango has an affordability problem, but you don't see people on the streets there. So I'm just wondering,
So part of it is we have a unique situation where we have, Aztec and Farmington nearby. We have Cortez, Mancos nearby. So there are lower cost living places that allow a Telluride or a Durango to kind of get away with it a little bit, where there actually are places that there's affordability. So
somebody told me once that, and I verified it through asking a few people in Denver.
Yeah.
Someone told me that Denver's downfall and Colorado became ruined as soon as legal marijuana hit the state. It sent the state into a downfall. Yeah. Do you agree with that at all? Is there anything to that?
Well, I think that it's the sort of thing where Mark Twain had a saying, it's not what the people know, it's what they know that ain't so. And so if you see a change in your cultural or political dynamics, you never want to point it to yourself, and you always want to blame something or someone else. And in my opinion, the marijuana thing did have an impact, but now that it's getting legalized most everywhere in the United States, we're actually seeing a decline in the marijuana stuff, but it's still there.
Are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. And I can also help you find your new house, too. Email me and I'll work with you on not just helping you figure out where to move, but I can help you find your perfect home, too. That's right. I know awesome, reliable agents all over the country, and I'd love to connect you to somebody who can help you search for that perfect home. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.